Welcome to The Dating Lab, the podcast that makes midlife dating simpler, saner, and maybe, hopefully, a little less overwhelming. I'm your host, Alyssa Dineen, and each week we'll break down one real dating challenge that adults 45 plus face today. From confusing apps and unclear profiles to first date nerves and slow fade messages. And you'll walk away with at least one practical tool you can use immediately to date with more confidence, clarity, and momentum. Think of this as your bi-weekly place to experiment, learn something new, and hopefully try something new without the pressure. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dating Lab. Today I am going to have my first solo episode. And I wanted to take this opportunity to talk more about my own story and how I met my partner of now 9 years, and how I started the date vanilla framework method and why. And it all comes back to my own story and also just a pattern that I started seeing with all of my clients' success stories. So I'm going to get right into it. And a lot of you know my backstory, especially if you've been following along for a long time, but some of you that are new to my community may not know my full story. So it also all relates back to, again, how and why I came up with the date vanilla method. And sure, it's a catchy hook. It's a tagline. It's definitely makes you want to know more. And like, what does this date vanilla mean? But I truly, truly believe that for women, this is a method that you should really be following. And I want to get into more detail about what it is because I've done a few short videos on it, but I feel like it's really important to be really clear what this really means. And I'm sure at first glance people think, oh, she wants me to date someone boring or to settle for someone I'm not that attracted to. And that is not at all what I'm saying or what date vanilla means. So let me get into what it does mean and why I really believe that it is one of the dating methods that I think can truly move the needle. And it's how I've seen many, many clients meet their love of their life, their now partner, maybe they got married, whatever that looks like for you. But it's moved the needle for a lot of people to embrace this framework. So my own personal story, I'd been dating a lot of different types of people over the 2.5 years before I met Yoav. And I met him on Tinder, actually, and that was now over 9 years ago. And that was during a phase that Tinder was not so hookup-y. Still, of course, had that, but it was also people meeting real viable partners. And actually, I knew quite a few people getting married from meeting on Tinder. So I was dating a lot of different types of people, and we met online, and he was not my type. He's very good looking, but he wasn't my usual type. But something made me swipe right. He had one good photo that piqued my interest, and we match. And I joke about it now that he messaged me within seconds of matching. And I said in my reply back to him something like, a dating app record, response time record. And something that I want to point out is actually that he did ask me out for that night, which I know a lot of people are like, that's a red flag. And I know as a lot of women feel that way, that it sounds like maybe they want to hook up or just, why would they rush it like that? And so I did decline for that night because I just actually was already home and kind of already in for the night. But he asked me out for the next morning, actually. And I learned, actually, when we finally did meet, I learned that it's because he travels a lot and he wanted to take advantage of being in New York, because he's only in New York at the time, he was only in New York for about like 10 days a month. So he, really wanted to meet. So I said that I could meet the next morning for coffee before work. And yeah, so I agreed to meet for coffee before work the following morning. And I went on that first date, and it was supposed to be for coffee, but it turned out to be matcha for each of us, which is really funny now because I actually don't like matcha, but I remember that day being like, it was at a place that was kind of known for matcha, and I had already had a couple of cups of coffee that day, and so I got there first, and I ordered my matcha. I went and sat down, and then he came in and he ordered his separately, and he is a matcha drinker, so he thought it actually was a sign. And of course, we've talked about that now and joked about it, but so that first date was totally pleasant. It was nothing crazy exciting, but also nothing offensive, no red flags. And at the end of that hour, I had to head back to work, and he had to get going too. And he asked me out again for a week later when he got back from his trip, and I said yes. And so a week later, we went out for date number 2, this time for dinner, and I had a really fun time. I remember we joked a lot about, we were actually sitting at a bar of a restaurant, and the food was really good, but we joked around because somebody I had dated previously came in on a date with someone else, and we had this whole running joke about it. And, we definitely connected, but I did not feel any chemistry. And at the end of that date, I remember he, kind of just went for a peck, and I definitely wasn't into anything more than that. So I pecked him, and, just a quick kiss, and said goodnight and thank you. And he definitely thought I was not interested. He wasn't sure, but on that date, he did ask me out for a third date. So again, I think it was about a week later, we went on another dinner date. And on that date, I remember feeling slightly less excited, not because he wasn't interesting. I had a great time because he's interesting and he asks a million questions. If you meet Yoav, you'll know that he's very curious and wants to know everything about you, and doesn't like to talk about himself, actually. And so all of those were really appealing to me. All of those qualities were appealing to me because, as a lot of after dating a lot, you start to see how a lot of people don't know to ask us a lot of questions, and they just talk about themselves. So it was very refreshing. I could tell he was genuinely curious about me and wanted to know more. So I felt like, there's a lot of green flags, and I wasn't bored. It was, again, a perfectly nice night. I had a good time. But when we left, it wasn't like I wanted to kiss him goodnight. I just was really not feeling that still. And at the end of that date, I felt like that said something to me, because I was under the impression, okay, by date number 3, you should definitely feel, that attraction. And if I don't want to kiss him, that's not good. I wanted to see him again, but I didn't want to kiss him. So at the end of that date, he asked me out for a 4th date. And I said I had to get back to him on timing, because I had my kids, their school break was coming up, and I had a lot going on. And I remember we weren't going to be able to see each other, I think, for a couple of weeks, I want to say. So I said I'd have to get back to him. And also, I just wasn't sure I would go on that 4th date, honestly, because I wasn't feeling the sparks, and I felt like I should be by then. I almost convinced myself not to, because I felt like I might be leading him on. And in the end, I did go out on that 4th date. And I want to mention here that now, as a dating coach, and with so much experience with other people and their experiences, I thought it would be leading someone on. It isn't leading someone on to continue getting to know them. The bottom line is that you're not sure yet. And until someone gives you a reason to say no, then you say yes. So I didn't really know that I was practicing that at the time. I just felt like, okay, I'm going to give this one last shot. But now looking back, I realized that I wasn't doing him a disservice. I would have been doing him a disservice, or both of us a disservice, by not getting to know him better. So I did decide to go out on that 4th date, which I didn't know as much as I do now, like I said. And I could have easily just said, the chemistry's just not there, and not gone out on that date. And I have seen that happen so many times with clients. And I feel like they don't believe me when I say it could still happen. I think they don't believe it. And I get that. I mean, thinking back, I really don't know why I went on that 4th date, but definitely I must have had some kind of gut instinct leading me. So back to that 4th date. So we went out on a Friday afternoon. I remember it was late lunch, and we had a couple glasses of wine. And at that point, we had gotten to know each other better. We'd spent, probably around 6 hours together over the course of the previous 3 dates. And we'd been texting with each other in between all of those dates for the last, I don't know, at that point, I think it was probably about 4 weeks actually from the time we met until that fourth date. And so we'd gotten to know each other by text too, which for those of you who know, I say you can't get to know someone over text. You can once you've met them in person. You shouldn't rely solely on texting, of course, but once you've met someone in person and you know who they are, then yes, you can get to know each other better that way. And so both of us had definitely gotten more comfortable with each other, and our guards were lifted. And I felt like, we shared more, we got a little deeper, we laughed more. And that also came out that day that he's actually really, really funny, which I could tell he was, had a good sense of humor, but he was actually deeply funny, like much funnier than I was expecting. And so for me personally, that was definitely a turn on. And I started feeling something. And I remember by the middle of the date, I got up to go to use the bathroom. And I remember thinking to myself, like kind of one of those like looking in the mirror moments, like, oh my God, I really like this guy. I can't believe I'm feeling it. I felt really attracted to him and I couldn't wait to kiss him, which was a huge shift. And so we finished our lunch and we walked around a bit and we definitely kissed, and the fireworks were totally off the charts. And from then on, we knew, and we both went off the apps, and of course, the rest is history. But let me back him up a minute because I do want to talk about his profile and therefore like how I started this date vanilla method. So his profile was really ho-hum. He had pretty boring pictures that didn't really tell much about him. I remember one had someone cropped out, which now I know was his ex. And he had one good picture and a really boring bio that read like a resume, but no red flags, no weirdness. And when we were texting with each other, messaging on the app, he was super respectful, no sexual comments, no insinuations, no innuendos, no pressuring me to meet, none of that. And he was super responsive and made it very clear that he wanted to see me and there was no games. And although the first few dates had no chemistry, I was never bored and I looked forward to seeing him. And that's something that I tell my clients too, is that you should still be looking forward to seeing someone just like you would, I'm having dinner with a friend tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing her. In that way, you should still be interested in the person and excited to hang out with them. So yeah, and obviously I'm so glad because lo and behold, we had major chemistry and still do. So I repeat, I am not saying that you need to settle, because if you're not finding someone, it's because your standards are too high. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, your standards should be so freaking high, but for the right things. They need to be high for the right things. They need to be high for values and integrity and honesty and availability and showing up. Not standards high for he's 6'3" and super successful and dotes all over me when we're together and then I don't hear from him for a week. So there's high standards for superficial things, and then there's high standards for things that are actually meaningful and important. And I think that's a good distinction. So that's my story and how Date Vanilla was born. So I hope this clarifies things a little bit. And for the people that are unclear or were unclear on what date vanilla could possibly mean and why would I want to date someone vanilla, that sounds horrible. It doesn't mean boring. You go for the vanilla profile because usually that means it's because that person is respectful and isn't showy and isn't trying to convince you of something. They just are who they are. They're telling you something about themselves. And Yoav's profile was vanilla, but he personally is anything but vanilla. And for anyone that's met him will know what I mean by that. But yeah, they shouldn't be giving you a shopping list of qualities that they want in a partner. They should be telling you real information about themselves, which was what his profile did and what I see in a lot of the profiles of my clients that have met someone. I've looked at the profiles, and sure enough, it's someone who, was very clear and told a lot about themselves and not in a showy way. And again, there was no sexual comments or innuendos, and just very clear. And maybe there wasn't major fireworks. I've even heard about people going on date 4, date 5, date 6, even, where then the chemistry develops. And it's because it's built on something real and there's a real connection there, almost a friendship that's built up. And not that I'm saying that if you do have major chemistry, that means it's wrong. That's actually not the case. In fact, I have clients that have had major chemistry on the first or second date. It's just that it's not an indication of a long-term relationship or a real partner. It's just the chemistry was there early. That's it. So again, that's my story and date vanilla. But on another note, I also just wanted to talk about something else that's been on my mind. And because I'm doing my first solo episode, I figured I'd talk about this too. And that's that I know there's so many dating coaches out there now. And it's actually so crazy to me because when I started doing this over 8 years ago, it just wasn't what it is today. And the dating landscape is just, it has really blown up, and anyone can say they're a dating coach. And I guess, when there's something that's needed and a profession or a coach or something like that that's really needed, for example, like therapy, there's a million therapists too, and there's enough clients to go around. So there is a need, but I am concerned about everybody getting so many different messaging from so many different dating coaches, and each have had their own different experiences and are also offering advice based on their own experiences and maybe their own age group or their client demographics. And so you may be following a dating coach who works with women and men looking for, their first marriage and want to settle down and have kids. And, that's a younger crowd. And that's different from working with people that are divorced or widowed and in their 50s and 60s and 70s. So the advice could be different, and you may love a dating coach and love following their content, but it may be not be completely appropriate for you or applicable to you. And it might be hard to discern which content really is for you and which isn't. And I just want to say, be aware who you're following and that there's a lot of conflicting advice out there and that you're following people that you really trust. And hopefully you trust me at this point. And I love what I do, and I really care about my clients, and I care about what I do, and I want to do what I do with integrity. And I hope that I've built that trust for all of you. And I really appreciate you listening to my rants today on my first solo episode. And please comment below on any other, topics that you'd like me to cover, whether it's with another expert or just talk about on my own, because I would like to do more solo episodes like this. I think it is a good opportunity to really convey my own beliefs and methods and experiences, and also success stories. I think that could be nice to hear about too. And it's something that it's a different platform than Instagram or Facebook or something where you can just do these really quick videos. Doing a podcast is obviously I can get a little deeper, or actually a lot deeper into some of these things. So please comment below and tell me topics that you want to hear about or experts that you want me to interview. And I would love to hear about that. So thanks for joining. Thanks for listening to The Dating Lab. If today's episode gave you something to think about, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And if you want more dating guidance, you can find me on Instagram or at stylemyprofile.nyc.com. Until next time, remember, dating is a process, not a verdict. You're doing better than you think.